What is going on, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another episode of The Kingdom Says. I am your host, as always, Garrett Williams, and I am joined today by my two usual co-hosts. We're all back. We've got Kyle back in action once again. Kyle, how are we doing today, sir?
Doing well. Back with you boys. Missed the last one. Sorry about that. We'll have some stuff going on. So good to be back, ready to go.
Yes, sir. And also, of course, Arrowhead Tom, the resident draft expert on the pod. How's it going, Tom?
Really good. I have not skipped out on any bail bonds or anything like that this week, so I think I'm doing in the upper echelon of Chiefs Kingdom right now. So
that'd make one of us, but a fellow member of Chiefs Kingdom has not, unfortunately, followed those rules. So, the wolf is on the loose, as they say.
Oh, or maybe not, because there was a potential. Maybe he was cornered.
I
today.
did see that.
We'll
I did see that. The wolf might have been captured. Actually, who knows?
The wolf might be in the trap.
Well, yeah. So we've got a great episode for you guys today, furthering some more draft talk for you here. Last episode with me and Tom, we kind of went over some of the options, the potential round one options for the Chiefs coming up in April here. We're gonna kind of explore some more positions today, go in depth a little bit more on a couple key positions that the Chiefs will most likely, if not almost guaranteedly, be adding in this upcoming draft. So. As far as Chiefs news, unfortunately, there hasn't been any since the last time we talked, or past couple weeks, really. The Chiefs have really been all quiet on the Western Front, as they say. Potential rumor mill have been flying. Maybe some more trades are still in talk. Yeah. The D-Hop trade they're confirmed for, and then they leave for. It's a very dead season for the Chiefs right now, fellas.
Yeah, it's quite normal for them at this point of the year to go radio silent. I'm not really surprised. I'm surprised we haven't seen any of the internal stuff handled more, but I don't really think they're going to do any of that until they need to, and I think that's kind of what they're waiting on, is the next set of chips to fall. They don't like going into drafts with holes. I don't think they're going to go into this draft with a hole, but there's a possibility that they don't get either of the two options that they originally had planned. It's happened before. They had an idea for a tackle, and then they didn't get that tackle, so they had to go to an adjust and ended up the Orlando Brown deal. So, they have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. I'm not worried. I just would rather them get it done sooner rather than later. But we're dealing with the Cardinals in the D-Hop scenario, so who the hell knows when they're going to decide to do anything. That franchise, as far as they were trading Patrick Peterson for 8 years or whatever it was, so who knows. The Odell thing, Odell is Odell, and I don't think you're going to see Odell sign anything or do much of anything until later in the summer.
Yeah, so I think this is the time of the year where it's very much hurry up and wait. I think from a franchise standpoint, you're kind of okay if you don't have any movement from either of those two before the draft. And I think from their position, both from the Cardinals and from Odell, it does make a little bit of sense to wait, just because, that's when teams are going to go, oh man, we missed out on this receiver. We really need to find a guy. So that comes into, and we'll talk about wide receivers kind of the next week or so coming up. Just looking at the calendar.
That's all anybody wants to talk about. They've solved all the other problems.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait till the third. I'll start dropping some wide receiver goodness out here into the world. Spoiler alert, there's not a lot of wide receiver goodness in this class. I'm desperate for it.
Another spoiler, I think there's going to be some conflicting views on this pod of these guys.
Yeah, there are going to be some conflicting views. There's going to be Garrett's view and Kyle's view, and there's going to be the right view, which is mine.
Of course. Yeah. We all knew where that one was going. But Tom, what do we got on the menu for today and this week as far as some positions that we're looking at?
Yeah, so we talked a lot last week about defensive end, and we're kind of continuing that theme of talking about the trenches. We want to arguably, the most important part of a franchise outside of your quarterback, right, is protecting your quarterback and getting to the other team's quarterback. So we've been pumping out the graphics, the write-ups for the offensive tackles this week. We'll have some more of those, and then early next week, over the weekend, we're going to throw out some more write-ups for some of the defensive ends. So I wanted to talk a little bit about where the Chiefs are as a franchise with their offensive tackles and defensive ends, because they've had, even though they brought some guys in, they have had some pretty significant changes there. You have Orlando Brown who departed, who you thought could be a guy who sticks around for a while, and that obviously didn't work out. You have Frank Clark, who's been a staple on this defense, and we've talked before about the leadership there. And while he hasn't signed anywhere else, it may not be a reunion that happens. Again, we'll see what happens after the draft. Sounds like his market will probably warm up once people get a little bit desperate. Or, again, Frank's a vet. He's probably going to chill at home. Come July, just start stretching out. Second or third preseason game.
Yeah. Talk
give
to me
Andy
about just after training camp ends and everybody goes back to their facilities for their. Then you'll see some of those guys.
What's that? You guys got 2 days left in St. Joe? I'll be right there, Coach.
But not a reliable option really to count on. Kind of similar to Melvin Ingram last year, how everyone kind of assumed Melvin Ingram would just be back, and then that didn't end up happening. So.
Yeah, so you're looking at guys. The idea is you get younger and you want to find some of those cornerstone pieces. And I wanted to start here because the 2023 draft does have. I was like, wait a minute, 2024. I promise I'm not.
We're not looking ahead that far, or maybe we are.
The 2023 draft class, which is the one we are talking about.
Yes, Tom has a problem. He's already started looking at guys.
There's not just some good name. There's some good players, but there's some all name players from next year. Anyways, 2023 has to happen first. So we are the 2023 class is pretty deep at both offensive tackle and defensive end. And there's a lot of different flavors there. And so I wanted to talk about that. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball. I think the Chiefs, with the Orlando Brown departure, wanted to find long-term stability. We heard that term. They gave Juwan Taylor a 4-year deal. He's going to be moving over to left tackle. It's a little bit of an experiment. I personally feel really good about that. But also there's some guys who, maybe later on in the draft, you start them at right, you might have to move them to left, some flexibility. I think one of the things that when you talk about offensive line play for Kansas City, you need to know that, Andy Reid and Andy Heck both love guys who can play multiple spots. So let me ask you guys, how do you guys feel about the Chiefs' offensive tackle position as it sits right now going into next season? Sounds like Juwan Taylor and maybe Lucas Niang is going to be the right tackle.
Niang, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, from it, it seems like it's kind of that penciled in right now at Lucas Niang. It's kind of his right tackle job to lose. I mean, there's really no one else in the clubhouse, over him at the moment. It was his job at the beginning of, 2 seasons ago, last season or whatever, but injuries kind of derailed that for him, and there's no other vet kind of tackle on the team that you might add in that spot. I think we got Prince Tega, who might still be
I think he's gone off somewhere.
A free agent. So other than that,
yeah, but you can only play him if you can pronounce his name, Garrett. You can only bring him up if.
Yeah, that is true. I can't. So other practice squad potential guys that we might have, but yeah, not a whole lot of depth even just behind the starters right now at tackle. So that's definitely a key area that Chiefs kind of have to look at. What do you think, Kyle?
So here's the thing. This may be unpopular for a lot of Chiefs fans. I know a lot of people are worried about Niang at tackle, but they seem to really like him, and they really seem to want him to play that position for them.
They do.
I would not be at all surprised if he's your starting right tackle week 1. They'll address tackle depth in this draft. I just don't want everybody to be pissed if it's not the first round. That's where I'm at. Because if it's not in the first or second round, people are going to lose their mind. And I don't know that the Chiefs view that position as much of as a whole as everybody else views it as right now.
Yeah.
And if you've been reading, for example, Jeff Schwartz pretty much swears up and down Niang will be your right tackle next year, barring somebody being brought in that just blows him out of the water.
It's definitely his job to lose, according to Jeff Schwartz.
Now, Jeff's pretty good at the position of offensive lineman. His brother was one of the best to ever play that spot, and for this organization. So they may know a little bit of stuff about kind of what the thought process is behind that position, especially because I think Mitch was there when Lucas got drafted right at the beginning of that still.
Yeah, he was still on the roster.
Yeah, so that says at least something. You may take it for whatever it is. Like I said, I like Lucas. I said when they drafted him that I liked the selection then. I understood the injury stuff. I understood that they were going to have to address the injury stuff because the medical staff reports up from the medical staff at TCU at the time about that medical staff weren't the greatest. And there was some conversation about mishandling of that injury and stuff that made it worse, which caused the injury that happened that we all saw the year after. So, which they basically said was the same injury. They just never actually fixed it right, which like, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But they basically gave him last year as a redshirt year after they tried to start him. He got hurt with that deal. And they were just like, all right, you can redshirt while he's playing fine. We'll go with this for now. Get fully healthy. We want you to play right tackle. Get ready to go. Get a whole year. Get your body where you want it. Get back to full strength. And because the other thing is, when you get hurt like that and you're that big, it's hard not to get a little out of shape. Really hard.
It is hard to.
It's hard for normal people not to get out of shape when they don't get hurt.
It's hard to get in shape
when you're that big already.
Listen, as somebody who is that big. Sometimes, maybe not that tall, but as somebody that is big, it's tough, man.
I can imagine.
So, this is, So let's talk about the tackle class just real quick. I'm going to start with two guys who I think are exclusively right tackles. I don't think they have flexibility unless you maybe want to move one of them might be able to play guard. Darnell Wright.
You do that tells me he's not good enough to play tackle.
Well, hold on. I'm saying he's good enough to play right tackle. So Darnell Wright out of Tennessee I think he's one of the safer picks, but they tried him at left tackle in Tennessee. He did not hold up very well.
High floor, low ceiling.
Yeah.
I love this kid. He's one of the few I've actually seen.
Now, the floor there is like probably, average to above average 10-year starter. Really good run blocker. He's going to hold his own and pass protection. I do worry overall, like he did not, like his tape at left tackle, not pretty. Now, I know, again, this is one of those Madden, like realities versus actual reality. You can't just go in, change the position on paper and go, oh, everything's the same. Yeah. Or he got better. It's not how it works, right? I think we've talked about offensive linemen. It might have been Jeff Schwartz who said, or maybe it was Joe Thomas, one of the big guys who's out there on social media a lot. He says it's kind of like learning to wipe with the opposite hand. Was it Mitch? So it's not as easy as that. Credit to Darnell Wright. But I think some of the other things is when he was, paired up against teams, best pass rusher, the more athleticism, that struggled struggled a little bit. Now, he has room to grow, and he has, we talk about the high floor. Like, I think he's going to be a solid NFL tackle. There's some people who are really high on him, and that's fair. I think he's got some of the stronger. Yeah, he's got some of the stronger hands in the class. Like once he gets his hands on you, good luck. But yeah, I worry about his lateral agility and that type of thing.
Garrett, is it me or have we heard that description of a tackle before fairly recently playing tackle for the Chiefs that this fan base threw an absolute temper tantrum about over the last 2 years?
Sounds like somebody that we would definitely know.
Might be playing for Cincinnati this year, maybe.
I mean, I think that's
just the description you just gave is
right tackle.
Speed rush. But when he gets his hands on you,
maybe if you play him at the right position, maybe he might be okay.
Here's the other thing about Wright that was a little confusing. Like his arms were just a little shorter, 33 3/4. Most of the time, you want him at 34. His hands are small at 9 inches, so it's interesting. But I think he has the potential to start. The other one.
How many boxes does he check on the Andy box?
About that.
Not a ton of them.
I think he could play guard.
We don't really
So
see
can
guards.
Darian Kennard, who they drafted last year.
Yeah.
Apparently,
So,
allegedly.
well, you brought up Orlando Brown. Let's talk about Orlando Brown's older brother, and that's exactly what he is. Well, not exactly, but DeJuan Jones at Ohio State.
Big guy.
Listen, we knew this kid was big, and he still exceeded expectations.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they fed this kid growing up, but
Other children?
Other children seems about right. So let's okay. Orlando Brown. All right, big guy, big tackle. Let's talk about his size. So Orlando Brown was listed at 6'8", 345 pounds, 35-inch arms.
Does anybody believe the 345?
Hold on, this is his combine. So Orlando Brown had 35-inch arms with 9 3/4 hands. DeJuan Jones, also 6'8". He was listed at 374 pounds. His arms, 36 3/8. His arms, an inch and a half longer than Orlando Brown's.
He can touch you from 3 yards away, is what you're telling me.
He's going to be able to line up at right tackle he could probably snap the ball to Patrick Mahomes from right tackle, and it still be under center. Yeah. His hands are 11 inches and 5/8. So he literally has.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
guys,
big boy. Big boy.
I would give you a visual representation, but I literally don't have a cooking pan sitting next to me.
That's really
so. Here's the wild thing, though. Ran faster than Orlando Brown at the combine.
I don't know that that's wild. Didn't Orlando have one of the
historically one of the worst
scores in the history of athletic testing?
No, he did. Yeah, he didn't run very well. He ran 5.35. DeJuan Jones did, and Orlando was 5.85. If you get close to that 6-second mark, people.
5.35 for 3.
5.35 for 3.75 isn't so bad.
Yeah. So, listen.
So do we have a RAS score for him?
What's a great question. Yeah, look it up.
Because I know Orlando was hilariously historically bad.
So
like he doesn't have
let's talk about just real quick. Gotcha. Let's just talk about mock draftable. Great database that shows you, compares, everybody. So I'm going to give you the percentiles where he actually, let's do this to all O linemen. So of all O linemen for as far back as this goes, right? So the way this works is the percentile, you want to be in the higher percentile. Higher is better. That means you're at the top of that category. So
when they measure children, they measure them in the 99th and 100th and 105th or 80th percentiles. You want bigger numbers, not smaller.
Yeah. 6'8" and a quarter, that is good for a 98th percentile. 374, that's a 99th percentile. Again, that's probably not the best. They probably want him to play a little lighter than that. Wingspan at 87 and 7/8. So he's almost 88 inches. His wingspan official is 87 and 7/8. So 88 inches. 98th percentile. Arm length, 36.
98? Who else's arms are that?
Bigfoot.
36 and 3/8, 98 percentile.
Right.
His hand side at 11 and 5/8, 99 percentile.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one.
Yeah. So, he is one of the biggest people to ever come into the NFL. Yeah. One of the biggest people to ever come into the NFL. With him, the weight, I think, is going to be something that you want to watch, because I do think he's got some bad weight on him. He's a guy that I would definitely want to make sure that you have some good nutritionists and he's following a pretty healthy diet. So he gets a lot of hype.
He played at Ohio State. Of course he does.
Yeah. Well, I think here's the deal. I liked him when I watched it.
Okay.
And we liked it when Tom
froze
did
up on you guys. Sorry about that. I'm back.
You're good. You're back.
No, that's
We
actually not my
apparently
internet.
have
It's my graphics
microwavable
card.
internet reception on this show
Graphics
where all of us
card.
get to have it happen at once.
Yeah. No, that wasn't my internet. It's my graphic card that's slowly dying. Just a good time to mention that we're gonna start some things, and if you want to donate to the funds to help me keep my graphics card alive, greatly appreciated. The OnlyFans links in the content or in the podcast episode description.
So Tom, here's my question about DeJuan Jones. Obviously,
yes,
you compared him to Orlando Brown Jr., but he's playing the right side.
Yeah.
So that's a positive, right? I mean,
that's
a
huge
way
thing.
More natural position. Where is he getting drafted at exactly?
He's going to be a first rounder. I would be shocked if he makes out of the first 40 picks. I would be shocked if he falls out of the first round. Again, different teams view him again based on what you ask out of your tackles. The interesting thing with Kansas City is we've seen them work with a guy very similarly in Orlando Brown, and I think the benefit there is him not being on the blind side. The big concern is going to be his ability to move in space. Now, on tape, you don't have to move that far, but you can reach halfway across the field. You can just lean into it. So there's some benefits there. Like I said, I think he carries some bad weight. I think he could slim down a little bit and not not lose power. I think he's got.
You're telling me a guy that's 375 has a little bit he could trim off and still be pretty freaking strong? Really?
Well, hold on now, because you got to understand, because you got to look at these body types, right? Because there's guys who are 350, 360, all that stuff, who are just look at
the other guy they signed to play the other tackle spot, who looks like he's cut out of stone at 340 or whatever it is.
Yeah. So, DeJuan Jones, I haven't seen him shirtless. Actually, hold on, let me Google this.
Forget shirtless. The dude in the suit jacket after he signed I'm talking about the guy they just signed from the Jaguars, by the way, everybody.
Yeah. Jawaan Taylor.
The guy, he looks like if you Googled bodyguard in a suit, you'd find a picture of that dude standing there after he signed that contract. Like, that dude is just a fit human at 340 pounds.
I need you. This is live reaction in the show. I'm sending you guys this in the chat.
Yes.
It is a picture of DeJuan Jones playing basketball in high school. He was 6'9", 360.
Terrifying.
There's a picture. There's a picture. Could you imagine being in high school like, hey, you see that guy? Yeah, the one that looks like a Sasquatch.
No chance.
Yeah, I need you to stand in the paint and go with him. But I would say I think that there's some bad weight around the waist that he can lose. I think that he does better than some people give him credit for. Just in terms of getting to angles and reach blocks.
Okay, so we talked about these two, right?
Nobody is the answer, but
exactly.
The
okay,
picture
so Tom,
is some dude 3 feet over his head. That's crazy.
Yep, and he's slouched over and still taller than him. It's wild.
So DeJuan Jones, fun option.
DeJuan Jones, right tackle only.
So now, we got two guys, right? We got a whole nother list. We got some more options, obviously.
Yes, yeah. We got
23 minutes into it, yeah.
Sorry, the DeJuan Jones is a real
I
thing.
like DeJuan Jones. I'm really on board with this DeJuan Jones chain. I'm not.
So you're fine with him at any point in the first round?
At 31, I would be fine. I wouldn't want to move up for him. I think 31 is a pretty good value for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was my only question. Because I think they're moving up, so I don't think any pick is happening at 31. So
I think they might be moving up too, and I think it might be for a receiver that Garrett doesn't like. But let's not talk about it.
They're not gonna do that.
So Paris Johnson Jr. at Ohio State is like the bizarro version of DeJuan Jones. Paris Johnson Jr. does have versatility. He's got experience at right tackle, but he's a guy that's going to play left tackle in the pros. He's got the athletic ability to do it. He's got the size to do it. 1 year starter at left tackle, so there's a little bit of projection. Also no slouch in his own right? He's got 36 and an eighth inch arms at 6'6". So Also a massive span that helps. I think that he moves really well for his size. Um, I haven't finalized my tackle ratings, but he's probably going to be top 2 and not number 2. So that's it's hard because he's got 1 year tape, but all the tools are there.
That guy, huh?
You could project him and go, yeah, this is going to be a guy who plays left tackle in the NFL. Another guy I want to bring up is Broderick Jones out of Georgia. I don't want to say similar to Paris Johnson Jr. because I think Jones is a little bit smaller, a little bit his arms are a little shorter, and I think he is probably got a little bit more to go in terms of his technique. So that's the one thing I appreciate about Johnson is he for a 1 year starter, he looks you wouldn't guess that he was a 1 year starter. I'll say it that way at left tackle. Jones is fun. He gets a little over aggressive sometimes. I've seen him overrun blocks. I've seen him get kind of out of position and just kind of needs to do better at taking the right angle to get to a block. And then both those guys, I think, are going to have to work on adding some muscle. I think Jones is a little stronger at the point of attack, but Johnson definitely has the edge in terms of the overall athleticism and the skill set to be there. So, two other guys. One guy that should be dropping here in the next 24 to 48 hours, write-up wise, is Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern. I am struggling with him. I honestly,
pronunciation or
honestly, and this is where when you're doing this kind of stuff, you listen to other people, right? You scout with your ears and your eyes. My ears and eyes on this guy are probably more conflicted than anything else because I watch him and I'm like, that's OT1. Like that is the guy that I want in my off. Like I want him in my offensive line room. I want him running people over. He has the demeanor of a bulldog, and he just
where'd he go?
Gosh, he wrecks Northwestern.
That tracks.
Yeah, I mean, his last name is Skoronski. He sounds he sounds like he knows how to murder people.
Well,
just like was born with that
knowledge. Football at Northwestern, and kind of you talked earlier about what tackles and what players are asked to do in certain situations and scenarios. And the way Northwestern plays football, I don't know if you guys are familiar with where Northwestern is located, but it's not exactly warm during football season a lot.
Is it in the Northwest?
So they play out west, obviously. Yes, Garrett.
Maybe even in the north.
In the Northwest. It's out there in the pack in that general vicinity. And those boys, Oregon and Oregon State, a lot of speed rush guys, right? A lot of fast edges.
Kyle, Northwestern
plays in the Big Ten, but is up in that area. Or am I mixing there? Are they am I in the wrong conference for them?
I have no idea where Northwestern's at, honestly. Could not tell you.
Gentlemen, Northwestern is in Illinois.
No.
Northwestern Illinois.
It's in Evanston, Illinois.
I know which team I was thinking of. Yes, I was mixing conferences.
That's not that team.
That's up there that plays that football. It's style of football with those
purple.
This is telling how much me and Kyle pay attention to college football.
No, it's the purple jerseys and the similar play styles that got me there. But Northwestern, what they asked Skoronski to do is that nasty, gritty,
you were
nasty
still right.
Tackle and deal with speed guys.
Yeah, fall and winter in North Chicago area.
It's
not a pretty time.
Gross.
So, yeah. So my eyes on Skoronski, I'm going. That's like.
Why are what are the ears saying then?
The ears are saying his arms are too short to play tackle.
Okay, so we're in the measurement section of this conversation of draft minutia.
Historically, that is tracked.
What's his arm length?
32 and a quarter.
Ooh, okay.
Typically, that's pretty small.
Typically, I don't care about measurable stuff for the most part, but when we go to extremes outside of the norm, which is what that is, because if I'm not mistaken, it's like 33 and a quarter is the benchmark bottom. Right?
No, 34 is pretty. I mean, like there's some that are like like
Give me 30.
the guy who came out of Northwestern a couple years ago, Rashawn Slater. I
Slater.
think he was 33.5.
Yeah, that's what I
And
said. Like 33
they were
and
talking
40. I
about
remember
moving.
everybody screaming and throwing a fit about his arm length, and I'm like, yeah, that kid still isn't an alien though. So I don't know if that kind of mattered. And his were close. That's an inch and a half, almost 2.
Yeah. Now, yeah. I mean, there's some guys recently a little.
How good's his technique to combat those issues?
It's pretty good, but he's not on the level of Rashawn Slater, right?
Not watching
Rashawn Slater was a little
hands
bit,
at this moment.
Was a little bit better of a tackle. No, there's some outliers. Bernard Raymond, who's a tackle for the Colts, he was at 32 and 7/8, so that's still closer to 33. Yeah, and it's wild to think of it that way, because it's like, is it really that big of a difference?
What is the NFL?
I think it is. I think
a matter
it
of
is.
a game of
inches. Yeah, this is
boom catchphrase.
So yeah, I'm looking here. I'm just scrolling through. It's hard to find guys with.
Is that the only problem? Everything else checks.
Everything else, like I said, if it was not for the fact that his now.
So does that mean we can get him in like the second?
No, he's probably still going to be a round 1 guy. Here's the best way it's been described to me, and this is where I've heard that I felt like the narrative has shifted a lot since the combine. I think NFL teams see it this way. Peter Skoronski is probably a blue chip player at guard and a red chip player at tackle. So it's like there was a guy who played for the Washington. They're now the Commanders. They were not the Commanders when he came out. Brandon Scherf. Yeah. That's who it was.
Sure,
he was a guy.
Long career.
Very good player.
He was a guy that when he was coming out, people wanted to play him at tackle. There was a conversation there. His arms.
Didn't he become one? Isn't he going to end up probably in the Hall as a guard? Because wasn't he on the All-Decade team?
He was really good. So his arms coming out were 30.
Up on the All-Decade team.
Yeah. So his arms coming out were 33 and 3/8. So his arms were longer. So and he went 5th overall. Now it's hard. It's a tough break in that sense. I look at Skoronski this way. You draft him, you play him at right tackle. If he doesn't work out, in a couple of years when Joe Tooney moves on, Mr. Skoronski, I need you to just over to guard, and now you continue to have all-pro, probably caliber level play there. So
I didn't mean to end Brandon Scherf's career before it did. He's still currently playing at a very high level. That's not. Yeah. I wasn't trying to end your career, Brandon. I think you're a very good player. You should probably keep playing, seeing as how you have 5 Pro Bowls and an All-Pro in 7 years of your career. So I would suggest you keep doing that, and you'll be in the Hall of Fame.
I say he got a contract the same year we signed Joe Tooney, I think. So,
yeah. Jacksonville paid him to come down there from Washington and be their guard. So
yeah, exactly. So here's my question here.
They have him listed as an O lineman because I think the Jags and Peterson do what we saw them do. We talked about it when we talked about them with the Juwan signing. He played some snaps on the left side of the line, not necessarily as the tackle, but as the over tackle. So they moved guys around over there, did a bunch of weird stuff. But
so my question here for this offensive tackle conversation. Obviously, all these guys, some real blue chip players, some real high quality guys that are probably going to be first rounders. Do we see the Chiefs realistically going tackle in the first round? That's probably a safe pick at best, right? If the board doesn't fall the way they want.
I think it depends on how the board
Brett's
falls.
Going to let the board fall any way that he doesn't want, because I think when he gets to the point where he sees the guy that he wants at a certain spot, he's just going to pull the trigger and do it. I don't think it's going to matter really. If for me, I think they've probably got 2 or 3 names circled at a variance of positions, and whichever guy is available at the value spot they think they can get him, they'll do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that tackle is on their list of we need to take that in the first round.
Exactly. I think maybe you look in the second round, see if some guys.
They've shown they have an unwillingness to go first round for that unless they're trading for a known commodity. They the last time they went tackle in any kind of the first round or an offensive lineman really in the first round was Eric Fisher, and it's because that was the only option in that draft
class ever.
Pretty high draft class. Yeah, I think that this is again a little bit different because
Still can't. I'm still so glad they didn't draft Luke Jokel. Jesus.
Yeah, you have a lot of talent here. Even so, there's some other guys, and we won't get into them. We'll drop some reports on at least two of them. Anton Harrison and Matthew Berger on there on the schedule. Harrison's actually already written up, so you'll see those guys come through on the Kingdom Building reports. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that could 6 tackles that could go in round 1. And probably 7 guys that'll go in the first 50 picks or so.
Are there that many teams with the offensive lineman needs that are going to yank positions like that? Or is this just a case of everybody needs linemen all the time and they're just going to draft them because they're good and available?
Everybody needs linemen all the time. So
that is true. That is true.
There's some guys later in the draft, not as exciting. The good news is right tackle isn't as big of a need, but I think that one of the benefits is if the board falls, and let's say a guy like Broderick Jones is sitting there, or let's say a guy. So the other thing I'll say about like Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson, those 2 guys, there's some conversation on who's actually, some teams prefer one to the other. Peter Skoronski is going to be
fights, right?
Yeah, I mean it's all going to be about flavoring, right? If Paris Johnson, I think, is probably going to be a top 15 pick, top 20. I would be really surprised if he fell. I mean, unless he pulls a Laramie Tunsil.
Would he go in the top 10, lineman wise?
Skoronski has a chance. Johnson has a chance. Jones has an outside chance. Again, if a team likes Jones more than. I would say at least one of them will go in the top 10, more than likely. If they don't, though, that's good. That's good news for Kansas City.
Again, that means if they all clear that top 10, that means that there's a good chance that at least 1 or 2 of those guys slides into that 20-ish, 22, 23-ish range where Brett Veach is like, yeah, that's far enough. We can go there.
Yep, I'm going to go up and grab, Broderick Jones, or I really do like the idea of if Peter Skoronski falls far enough. Now, here's what's probably going to happen, because this feels to me like something that's going to happen. I feel like Peter Skoronski, just in my soul, I feel like he's going to end up on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's going to be an all-pro guard for the next decade with them. That just feels right in my soul.
Right, yeah. We were in the same division. We were in the same division. Right. My mind went Ravens because they're revolving now door at tackle and some of the issues they have, and guys wanting traded and guys getting hurt.
Some team's going to reach for sure.
No, Skoronski is a guy who I think just like that's a Steeler at heart. But I'd love to go grab a guy like that, and again with the need at wide receiver, everybody wants to talk about, like, one way to offset that is just give Patrick Mahomes 10 seconds to throw the ball every time. Because even if you run a 4.8, they'll get down there in time, and then it's just chuck it up to Jody Fortson in the end zone. And
that is a good team building strategy. Just build the offensive line, let the quarterback do the work.
So to transition us, because we just spent a whole bunch of time talking about the guys protecting him, quarterback. Yes. Mm-hmm. I watched, and this is going to lead us into the D-line conversation. You guys talked ends, and I'm sure you probably talked B.J. Ojulari.
We did, and he is the first one to get our very coveted Scouts pick badge.
So I got to ask then, how did you feel about watching what he did at his pro day today?
He was injured.
His
hamstring, I believe.
Was that reported? Because I didn't see that. All I saw were the 3 clips of oof.
There was something.
That was a thing.
I don't know. Let's do a live look.
Because I'll say this, his tape says volumes, and I'm not one that worries too much about the underwear Olympic stuff too much, but
okay, so he is dealing. Hold on, he is dealing with a hamstring injury.
I feel better now because I was like, what in the world is happening?
So
that
coming off.
He said that at his pro day today. He's dealing with a hamstring.
Coming off that re-aggravated it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel a lot better.
Dear God, watching that footage, I was like, "What happened? What's wrong?"
I didn't get to dig into it, but watching that, like, I could have ran that L better, and
that is exactly what I was like. I can run that better and faster and crisper than that. What is happening?
Yeah. And I think in that scenario, like, guys understand, like, hey, like, I think one of the things that
I'd rather him not full send it if he's coming off a hamstring reag 2 weeks ago. I just wanted to. I hadn't seen any reports or anything. All I saw was all of that video footage of him looking like he was either A, mailing it in, or B, something was very wrong.
Well, yeah, you could tell something was up. Now, I'll say this though: Jim Nagy, the guy in charge of the Senior Bowl, he tweeted out today that there's kind of some grumblings from NFL teams because a lot of guys are standing by their combine numbers that aren't very good, and I've seen that a couple times with. Oh goodness, I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he ran like a 4.5, and people expect him to run in the low 4.4s. And there's been a couple other guys they just they're like, nah. We're going to opt out of it. And there's some teams that really feel like, this is a process where you should be doing as much as you can. Right.
But I only ask why from that perspective to you, because what would be the mindset or the reasoning behind agent? Because remember, most of these dudes at this point have agents that are in their ear telling them what they should and shouldn't do and how to go about this. So from that look at it, why are these guys you just said everybody's basically like, what is wrong with this time? Why did you run this? And they're standing with them. Why would they do that?
Well, I think some of it honestly is the concerns of as long as you didn't put up like an Orlando Brown Jr. pro day type of numbers, right? Like where you're like your stock is completely tanked. I think that there's some concern about injury. I know a couple of years ago, Jeffrey Simmons got hurt during an event. There was even this year at the Combine, Andrew Voorhees at a USC tore his ACL. There's another guy last year, a defensive end, Michigan, Ojabo, who was looking at like a first round pick who fell into the 50s because, so I think if you are some of these guys are like first round guys, and it's like, what are you
gaining from it?
If this isn't going to get you into like the top 10 or move you up,
just be average and don't screw it up.
As long as you put an okay enough numbers to keep your status, like, where you are, it's just about where can you move the needle versus.
Are we going to see a change of approach from players and stuff towards the combine? Because we've seen players opt out of the combine in numbers that we didn't ever previously see.
Yeah. I think that we're going to see some more changes to combines. One of the things that's really interesting, and I don't remember which conference did it, maybe the Pac-12. One of the conferences held like a regional pro day.
I think that was the Pac-12.
Yeah, which I think there's some benefits to that. One of the reasons why NFL teams love the Combine in Indianapolis is actually not the testing, it's the medicals. It's a chance to sit down and have standardized reports and have their medical teams take a look at these kids. And we've seen that in the past where big things have been uncovered. I think that there'll be changes. I know a lot of teams are moving, even like we do the 40-yard dash, and that, for a lot of us, like casual people, a lot of teams have access to the like game day GPS numbers. And those are way more. Yeah, those numbers are way more important
because they're worried about game speed, not what you run on the track.
Yep, but I still think that there's a showmanship to it. I think there's a competitive element to it, right? That they want to. But again, as teams see or as agents see, players getting hurt in the pre-draft process. Because one of the other things is they finish their college football season and these kids immediately start training specifically for these events. Yeah, and so you think about it this way: you are trying to train your body to run the fastest 40 you've ever run.
Right, and there's a chance killing yourself. Also.
Yeah, and when you think about it, like that training and all that stuff, like that's where those non-contact injuries that we see on the football field that are concerning. You have a high chance of that, or you have a solid chance of that. So. Go ahead.
The only reason I would push back on that a little, the way that you develop, and this is because I was an athlete and I did a lot of these warm up, worked out, showcase tournament. You play for 8 months, 9 months, and then after the season's over, you show up for 2 or 3 weeks after the year in 3 random cities, and you play with a bunch of random people you never played with at these camps for a week or two, and you kill yourself trying to play the best you've ever played to get picked up by a team somewhere else next year. It's the same concept. When you do that and you go to train to get ready for those, if you train incorrectly, or if you don't have the proper people around you teaching you the proper techniques, the methods, the strategies, the issues, what to do and how to work those things, that's why I think what Bobby is for Patrick is so heavily important to what they do.
It's huge.
And well, but if you look at the careers of guys like that, look at Brady's career, look at some of these other guys that have had personal team, LeBron, different sports, LeBron and Jordan. Now, Jordan is a little different. He was his own animal. He worked himself kind of that way. But a lot of these guys spend, $1 million. LeBron's famous. He spends $1 million a year on his body. Medical and workouts and training and doing it the right way. And I think a lot of the reason that we see a lot of the injuries that we see pre-draft, there's 1,000 of these kids trying to get ready for this draft. There's not 1,000 personal trainers that are good enough to train NFL athletes. And it's not a shot. It's just the facts. If there were, you wouldn't have 32 of them that are on training staffs in leagues. And that's the only 32 guys with that job.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So when these kids are killing them, and that
agents,
this transition, it falls on the agents to find the proper trainers.
Exactly.
And if the agent mails it in or just finds a friend or knows a guy, then you're in trouble. So I think the thing that we're going to see, and the reason I wanted to bring the combine stuff up and that drill up, is because what we're going to start seeing is the teams like the combine for 2 things, really. The medicals and all the networking, behind the book dealing, conversations in the bar at 3:00 in the morning that we hear about, where all the news reporters get their sources and all the information gets shared and all that stuff happens. Free agency, a lot of the topics and conversations and feeling out of how free agency is going to go takes place the week of the combine. So those are the reasons the combine is important. And I think the underwear Olympics side of it's going to fade some, and you're going to see it be more of they'll have the 2 or 3, the bench, the 40, the stuff that draws the attention. But the rest of the stuff's going to be the interviews and the mental conversations, the conversations and the whiteboards and the meds and all that stuff. So from that aspect, when you look at that, that's why I wondered how much BJ having that kind of a pro day, and not now that we know he's injured and it wasn't just a decision thing, but we've seen some guys make just a flat out decision, as you said. So I just wanted to see make sure we touched on that part of it. I think it's important to factor in when people, because you can go look at RS scores. Everybody on listening to this podcast has the Twitter app. They know where to find Math Bomb. We've talked about him enough. You can go look at all that and have, this guy's not even going to, he may not do this or that because, why didn't he do that?
Yeah, less guys qualifying for, and again, it's a measured approach, and I understand it again from a draft standpoint. If you're the agent and you're going, hey, you're projected to be a top 10 guy. Now, like I said, the pushback is the NFL teams, they're starting to take notice and they're going, how competitive is this guy? How, is it totally fair? No. But it's a chance for, if you think about it, if you have 2 guys on your board who are close and you see one guy who, goes out and looks good in the underwear Olympics, like that's going to,
goes out and busts his ass, kills himself, really gives it. And then one guy that goes 80% and you can tell.
Yeah. It goes, I'll do that. Well, and you also have to remember this. These pro days, these teams spend money to go down to these pro days, right? Everybody's at the combine, but not everybody goes to these pro days. So could you imagine, if you're scouting Bryce Young, and Bryce Young, we knew he wasn't going to run at the combine because he was eating as much protein as he could that week to get his weight up. And then you get down to Alabama's pro day and he's not running there either. Right. Yeah. And you're like, crap, I wanted to get a time on this kid. Now, obviously, Bryce Young's got enough tape. You're not going to worry too much about that. But again, if there are 2 guys on your board that are really close, and one of them runs and one of them doesn't, it gives you a little bit of perspective,
Especially for, we talk about the top stars. Yeah, they have enough tape. But for those, day 2, day 3 guys,
15,
like that.
From anybody after pick 20 pretty much, or 15.
Like that.
You're fighting for pecking
for some of those guys. That's the difference between actually getting drafted or being an undrafted free agent. Like
And that's how I wonder if we're going to see a lot of the top guys that are basically locked into spots go away from attending the combine and doing some of this pro day stuff, and have it be left to the guys that are in picks basically 20 to the rest of the draft that really battle it out for that combine stuff.
Yeah. Well, I also think
Then you're
that
just risking though that a guy like that earns
Mhm.
his way up into that top 20 conversation.
Well,
and
but even
knocks
though
you
if
out.
they do, the guy that that he bumps drops 1 pick or 2 picks. It's not like he's
Well-
dropping out of the circus.
well, let's look at Nolan Smith, who's like and he's an edge player, so we'll transition back. But
talking
like
about edge players.
probably had the best overall combine performance of anybody in Indianapolis that
Dominated it.
weekend, right? How is he a top 10 pick now?
I don't know that
No.
it changes the thing.
Is he a top 20 pick? Maybe to some people. I honestly I could see him going 20 to 50, right? He
He's
could be
tough.
anywhere in that
What
range.
position is he playing?
Yeah, but that's the same pretty much the same spot where we had him. He might have bumped up a little bit, but I think the other concerns is you talk about, size, and I was tweeting
Is he
that
an
earlier
outside
today.
linebacker, or is he a D end, or is he a middle linebacker?
He's Hassan Reddick.
Safety.
That's who
Yeah.
he is. He's undersized. You're gonna put him in. You need to play him out wide. You got to let him grow into some play strength. He plays the run really well. His pass rushing is raw. I think a team's going to be disappointed. I think he's going to get overdrafted. I think a team's going to be disappointed in him. If the Chiefs took him at 31, that's about a comfortable spot for him. Now, if the Chiefs took him at 31, I would assume that Steve Spagnuolo has either been fired, is vacationing somewhere in a country that doesn't have cell phone reception,
So you're telling me
or
it's not the Spag type.
has started using drugs. Like
he's the farthest thing from a Spags. He is the atypical of Spags type.
Yeah, he would. Like I said, if that were, I would be afraid that somebody is holding Steve Spagnuolo hostage, and that Bob Sutton is.
If you get to a certain weight, you could tell Spags he weighs $195, and it wouldn't matter because that dude is nowhere near Spags's build, type, measurables, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about two guys who are both not Spags DNs, right?
Mhm.
BJ Ojolari, Nolan Smith. Are there anyone that are there some?
Is closer than people think. I think I talked about this last week. Miles Murphy is a guy to watch. Who's
we talked about.
Kyle's talking about like that trade up. Murphy's kind of slowly falling down the board. Going back and looking at how Clemson's got a weird defense, man, and they had we talked I think a little bit about Brian Brzee and the stuff he went through. I think he wasn't at 100% this season, rightfully so, and so Miles Murphy was kind of on the out on an island. Lucas Van Ness, Spags guy. He literally is he's like a little more twitchier George Karlaftis. That's where I'm at with him. There's two guys I need to get around to. Felix Enudike Uzama, who's a local kid, Kansas State.
Kid, yeah.
Went to Kansas City.
A lot of hype.
Yeah, played at Lee Summit, I believe. A little undersized, I think, for what Spags wants. Same thing. Will McDonald is a really popular name right now. I am not, and again, I will go back and look. I am not a fan necessarily of the fit. Not my favorite. Not my favorite defensive lineman in this draft. At least on my initial.
So when you look through this, if I had to give you between pick 25 and 35, who are the couple of names that jump off the board that they might actually have a shot at or want in that area?
Miles Murphy, Lucas Van Ness. So this is an interesting one because I don't know if he plays edge. And we've talked about him. This is one that I've been on for a while now, and you guys hopefully will. He had maybe an even better combine than Nolan. Adetomiwa Adebawore out of Northwestern, right?
Northwestern again.
He's a name that I've heard a ton about blowing up the draft stock because he's how he performed. That's a guy that I think the combine helped quite a bit.
It really did because he was like a solid second round guy, and now he's getting some second round height or first round height. Now he's shorter, again, also a local kid. We've talked about him before, local kid, but his arms are almost 34 inches. This man's insane. This guy at 282 pounds, 6'2", 282, right? 4.49 40-yard dash, 1.61 10-yard split, 37.5 vertical, 10.5 broad jump, 27 bench reps. Do you know who his numbers compare to really well?
That's ridiculous.
Pop quiz. Who do you think his number? I'll tell you. He went first round last year.
Let's think of who went first round last year.
Not the kid from San Diego State.
Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis.
No, it would have been
the tough guessing game, Tom. You're leaving us hanging here.
Okay. I will
There's so
tell
many
you
people.
that this kid was 3 inches taller and 10 pounds lighter. He ran 0.02 seconds slower. His 10-yard split was 0.01 seconds slower. Did not jump
You're
as
not
high.
talking about Trayvon, are you?
I am talking about Trayvon Walker, number 1
Jeez.
overall pick. At 10 pounds heavier and 3 inches shorter, so you got shorter legs, right, in theory. Adeboire.
Always the measurables.
Adeboire.
Well, let's put it like this.
Him. So
Trayvon has 35.5-inch arms, 262 and 40, and ran a 451 at 272.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, but how do they rush the passer? Do we know how he does? Does he have a pass rush?
I mean, he had 33.5 sacks. They compared him to Alden Smith, who had 33.5. Trayvon had, what did he have last year? It was tough because he was in Jacksonville with Josh Allen, but
yeah. So here's the thing about Adeboire. There were talks at the Senior Bowl that he was going to play defensive tackle. Then he shows up.
Be my question.
He had 3.5 sacks last year.
Yeah. They used him. He was the first ranked defensive end at the combine this year. His production is a question, right? But if you're sitting there at 31 and the board has been pretty rough, I think you could do a lot worse than taking a bet on a guy who has those athletic traits. Because defensive tackle, defensive end, what does Steve Spagnuolo like to do with his defensive linemen? What did we see do? What did we see Chris Jones do?
I'm begging for NASCAR. You preaching to the
Charles Pickett. I mean, we've seen it with a bunch of guys.
Can you imagine that where you've got 3 guys
Dana moves inside and out,
who are massive, and you don't know if he's
Karlaftis.
coming from the inside, the outside, your left, your right, but you just know that they're coming.
Pretty much all the Chiefs D-line has that versatility right now.
The more of them that look basically the same that he will use at any position, the better for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do want to get into some other names just real quick as we run down. These are probably guys I'll probably end up writing them up just for fun, but we've talked a lot about Keon White. His stock has cooled a little bit. I think the biggest thing is he's an older prospect, and guys are going, okay, how much work are we going to have to do before we get a serviceable starter out of him? And then by that time, are we really going to want to give him a long-term deal?
What system and how does he fit? Because he's a guy that I think fit matters too.
Yeah, and he's a bigger guy. Derek Hall just feels like somebody the Chiefs are going to want in the second round or could look at in the second or third round. Zach Harrison, athletic freak, but I'm not there, man. I really wanted to, but I don't even think his combine was that good, but I want to like him. 6'6", 274, big, long, strong. Looks like Tarzan plays like Jane kind of guy.
Those are always the worst, man. The Chiefs cornered the market on that for a while at that position, and I would very much like them to stay away from any of those potentials. So for me personally, that would be an automatic pass on that guy just for that reason. And that's probably not fair to him, but hey, man.
One more guy. Actually, maybe 2 more guys. One more guy. Older prospect, probably a day 2 guy. I would prefer him in round 3 over round 2, but I understand where the Chiefs, where everything may fall. It might be you just got to take him there. Byron Young out of Tennessee. older player. I think he's
That's
25.
not a name I was expecting to come out of your mouth.
Really? Again,
Why?
Why? The dude's got the juice.
He's got the juice cow.
And again, this is like a guy. If he's there at the end of round 3, and you're going to bring him in as a rotational guy, do it.
I need to go rewatch.
So his story is really interesting. Graduated high school, didn't play football for 18 months. Was managing a Dollar General. Got pulled into a junior college, Georgia Military College. 7 sacks and was a top 15 JUCO recruit. Then he lost the season to COVID. Then he went to Tennessee, and he put up solid numbers. Last year, he took a step forward. The thing with Young, like you see splash plays, and I don't think he's maybe an every down guy, at least not early in his career. I think he could develop into one.
So we splash and vanish.
Yep, splash, and then I just think he needs to learn the game, needs to be around it. Like again, we're talking about a guy who was playing JUCO ball 2 years ago. And
I hate to break this to you, but this fan base is not a very big fan of guys that changed positions later in their careers in college, or
that's why
a little extra time to develop. They just crucified one that left for New York. So
yeah, taking day 2, lower it. Well, I guess that's not fair too, because
it's hilarious to remind people that Travis Kelce didn't play tight end until he was like a junior in college either.
Yeah. So another guy I'm going to take a hard look at is Isaiah McGuire out of Missouri. There's some other guys.
See, you're just trying to play to the nice people of this podcast fan base, because now far we have mentioned K-State local, another local, and now a Missouri kid. Good Lord, Tom.
Well, how about
Isaiah McGuire? I've heard there's some people who I respect. Joe Marino from the Draft Dudes is a big Isaiah McGuire fan. I honestly, I'm gonna be real. I haven't taken a deep look at him. I've probably seen 24 snaps, just in highlights. There's some other guys that have popped up that I think are going to be names to watch, but those are the big ones early on that fit for what Spagnuolo looks like.
Right.
One of the things that and I know we're close to an hour mark, so we're gonna wrap. I'll wrap with this because I know I've been talking a lot. I think, as much as we were talking about wide receiver right now, this is not a great wide receiver draft class. The Chiefs have other legitimate needs, and I think if you can't get that wide receiver figured out, it's always good to protect your quarterback, but also you have opportunities to grab Myles Murphy. If he falls into the 20s, I think he's a guy who has a potential. This is a guy who last year, this time, I would have been talking about him as a top 5 potential pick. He was in the conversation with Will Anderson. Clemson defense as a whole took a step back last year. They had a coaching change. I still think that athlete is there. Lucas Van Ness, again, you get a guy very similar, for better or worse. I think his athletic upside is a little, I hate saying that because George Karlaftis is an athlete, but I just think there's work there.
Can he pull himself up a double-decker bus and bend the railing while he does it?
Yeah. And then, like I said, you guys know I love BJ Ojulari. I know there's some other guys out there in Chiefs Kingdom who are on that, but if you have an opportunity to shore up one of those, the trenches, like, you got to take it, even if you've got that need at wide receiver. And then, like I said, that's where you circle back to Odell or D-Hop or whoever else. You got to remember that there are got a lot of players who move after the draft too. A lot of guys who get cut, a lot of movement. I mean,
all right. I'll wrap with this. I hate to be the bearer of bad news to the majority of the Chiefs Twitter and Kingdom right now that is absolutely dead set on them taking a receiver, but the likelihood of them taking a receiver in the first round is extremely low. The likelihood of them taking a receiver in any round in the first 3 rounds that is an immediate impact player is even lower than that. And I don't know how many times we have to learn this lesson with an Andy Reid offense, but rookies don't play in his offenses as wide receivers. Everybody and their mother was, including this podcast, was almost convinced Sky Moore was going to get a large set of targets by about week 10 this year. He caught his first touchdown pass in the Super Bowl when he was on the wrong side of the field and ran the wrong freaking play. Right play, wrong formation. Look, Andy's offense is complex. So if I know everybody's upset and worried about wide receiver, the Chiefs aren't. They've shown you they will run Justin Watson and anybody else that they can out there. Marcus
Justin Ross.
Kemp, freaking
Justin
anybody.
Ross.
They don't
Yeah.
care. And it's because of 15. They're not worried about it. They have 87 and they have enough around it to be good enough to where they think Patrick can do it. So if they don't address wide receiver, will I be thrilled? No. But I won't be stunned that they don't. And I don't think it's happening in the first round. And you guys that do, I'm happy that you do, but I don't know A, who you'd take, because as Tom has mentioned, and we'll get into later on, there's not a lot in this class. And B, they have other needs. And if you're worried about long-term development of this roster, I don't think wide receiver is a position you need to develop long-term worry in, because your quarterback doesn't necessitate needing long-term wide receiver depth and development. So lock into these O linemen and D linemen that Tom's going to be dropping over the next week and these write-ups and whatnot, and really look at some of these guys, because I think these are some serious options for what they're going to look at doing in this draft.
Yeah,
At least
I'll
early.
wrap with this. Pretty accurate. I think wide receiver, I'd be pretty disappointed in seeing round one, especially with what the options are on the table, unless, of course, Jordan Addison falls all the way to a respectable
I know
range.
you love Jordan, but
Quentin Johnston? Is that what
Nope,
you said?
not that
Your
guy.
mic cut out. Quentin
especially,
Johnston?
Especially not Quentin
he just
Johnston,
doesn't
actually.
fit. We'll get into this later.
But yeah, tackle, even still almost like maybe a disappointing pick and maybe more of a safe pick. I feel like the big splash play for this draft for the Chiefs, at least in round one, would be edge. You can never have too many edge rushers, and you always want to have a plethora of edge talent. So either two, edge, OT, are going to be big needs for the Chiefs going forward into the draft. But like we've already talked about kind of this offseason with the signings that they've made and the kind of the current roster flexibility, they are very open. Like, it is really going to come down to a best player available type deal at every pick going through this draft. Like, there's no need to reach on anyone. There's no
Benefits of
need to
nailing 2 drafts in a row before this.
Exactly. You are reaping the benefits of building a successful franchise through the draft. So
Having an arsenal of picks.
that too. So we're going to talk a lot more about a lot more positions going forward through this draft
And it
process.
won't just be our ugly 3 mugs every time either.
And it won't. We got some really great special guests that are going to be lined up here. Some draft experts that are going to come on and shoot it with Tom. We also got some great content coming on YouTube, TikTok, potentially a couple other places.
Oh no, the TikTok is built. The Instagram is up. Everything is ready to go. You will have your content in all the manners you can get it.
So be on the lookout for all that. Draft is about a month away here. We've got
we're less than a month
to cover. We've got a lot to cover. So thank you all so much for tuning in and watching. If you're only watching, you can listen to us on Apple Music, Spotify, all that good stuff. Or you can watch us over at YouTube, the Kingdom Says Podcast. Be sure to follow us at Kingdom Says Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we will see you guys in the next one.